One thing, it begs the question, is it worth the $175 for the too low? Welcome to Big Song Hobbies. Recently, quite a few subscribers have been asking for the build details of my Team Gspeed V3 cheater rig. I've been waiting to work on a new body, and now that it's done, I will share the current setup of my Gspeed V3 LCG belly dragger. My LCG belly dragger started out as Element Enduro Sendero RTR that I purchased 2 years ago. Like any RTR, I started to mod and upgrade, and reached the point where I saw little to no performance improvement, and that's where I decided to convert to LCG chassis. I'll post a link to my Gspeed element conversion build video at the top right. It lists all the screws and the spacers that I use, so go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. And today, it still retains quite a bit of the original Element Enduro parts. So let's start with a quick overall stats. I normally run a 1300 mAh 3S LiPo battery, which I find has a good balance of running time and weight. Here I'm using Sky RC's 4-corner weight scale to measure my specs. With the battery, my Gspeed Element Enduro weighs 5.43 pounds and it has 63/37 weight distribution, and I'm currently running a 13-inch wheelbase. Now for the build details. As for the body, I'm using the Proline Cliffhanger body, trimmed quite a bit to keep it as low as possible. I cut out the rear bed so the body sits a bit below the rear shock tower and shocks. I got a chance to run it through several runs at Proline by the fire, and the new body worked out great. I'm noticing that the paint is being rubbed off by the front shock towers, so small cutout will be needed for the front end as well. I'm using 1.9-inch Chanquish wheels with the J-Concepts Ruptures tires with the Proline dual stage foams. The tires are vented. I found that Ruptures are one of the better performing tires for the area that I crawl. Plus I don't comp, so I don't have to worry about it not being comp legal. The Ruptures are a bit taller at 4.92 inches, and it provides that extra bit of clearance that seems to be benefiting the LCG chassis. As for the foams, I really like Crawler Innovations, but since the Ruptures are a bit taller, the Proline dual stage foam seems to work a bit better than the CI foams. I'm also using 8mm hex adapters to widen the width a bit. I'm using the stock Element Enduro RTR shocks. The only change that I've done is add a 5mm shock limiter to the front shocks. I'm also using the stock 30 weight oil on the front shocks and a 35 weight oil on the rear. One thing in the rear, I put the shock body at bottom to help with the CG. I also mounted the shock to the low link mount to position the shock a bit lower. For the front, due to the behind the axle drag link, I kept it straight up. I'm happy with the way the suspension is set up, but I might try a bit heavier 45 weight oil on the rear to see how that changes the behavior. I'm running the Gspeed B3 chassis in carbon fiber. The B3 chassis is a collaborative design between Gspeed and the Team Garage Hack. It has a 6-degree angle skid plate, which allows your rig to make a cleaner breakovers. It also has plenty of shock and suspension link mounting locations to adapt to your custom build, and it will bolt up to any aftermarket SCX 10 or 10.2 skid plate. As for the skid plate, I'm using the skid plate that ships with the TGH 2-low transmission. I am using the stock Element axles. They've been bomb-proof so far. Element Enduro axles do have a bit bigger pumpkin than the SCX 10 axles, but it hasn't bothered me at all. As for breast weights, I normally shoot for 60-40 weight distribution as a starting point, and then tweak from there. I'm finding that with the Gspeed, it actually does a bit better with a bit more forward weight bias. As I mentioned in the stats before, I'm running 63% front and 37% rear, and that seems to work really well. I only add brass weights to the front, and I'm running the SSD brass knuckles, Tyrio brass C-hubs, Tyrio brass diff cover, and then the SSD brass front link mouse. For the front bumper, I'm using the IRC's 3-inch push bar bumper. It matched the width of the crib body, and he added a bit of weight to the front end. In order to further lower the CG, I swapped over to a servo and axle using the UC Fab servo mount and the 4-link setup. And I'm really liking this setup on my jitter rig. As for the servo, I'm using Three Brothers G13 servo and the metal servo horn. Since then, the Three Brothers and other servo manufacturers have come out with better servos, but the G13 works for me, so I have not seen the need to upgrade it. As for other electronics, I'm running a G-made $15 motor for now. I normally run Holmes Hobby's Carlmaster Magnum Stubby 11-teeth motor, but it needed some service work and I haven't had a chance to work on it yet. As for ESC, I run the Hobby Ring 1080 ESC. It is definitely one of the best value ESC for the brush setup. Since I used the FlySky GT5 transmitter, I'm using FlySky FS-A3 3-channel receiver. I have conformal coated the receiver so that it's waterproof. The ESC, the receiver, and the battery are mounted to TGH B3 electronics tray sliders. It helps to keep the weight at the lowest point of the chassis. For transmission, I am using the TGH 2 low. The Stealth X transmission works really well, especially with the 25% overdrive gears, but I wanted to see how it compares to the 2 low. It definitely works better. It improved the overall CG by a few millimeters as the transmission now sits lower. The 2 low also has 30% overdrive, and that extra 5% makes a difference on certain climbs. Surprisingly, I thought I would save a tons of weight, but the difference was very minimal. One thing, it begs the question, is it worth the $175 for the 2 low? Personally, and this is my personal opinion, unless you plan to comp, I would just stick with the Stealth X with the upgraded OD gears from the Hot Racing or the Team K&K and use the savings for other upgrades. When I went to the 2 low, I had to also change the spur and the pinion gears. I'm running a 32-pitch 56-teeth spur gear mated to a 32-pitch 10-teeth pinion gear. The gear combination seems to work well for me. As for the drive shafts, I'm running the stock Element Enduro drive shafts. It has not let me down yet. One thing, since my wheelbase is 13 inches, the rear drive shafts were a bit too short, so I used a 1/4-inch fuel line to ensure the metal drive shafts don't come out. So far it has worked out without any issues. As for links, I'm using the high clearance links from the Hardcore RC. It was designed for Element Enduro and I kept using it after the Gspeed conversion. Due to my extended wheelbase, I am using longer Traxxas Revo rod ends on the rear. Lastly, I'm using the Soar Graphics rear axle upper link riser. It's a great way to increase the NT squat and it gives my Enduro more front end bite when climbing. I guess that covers all of it. Hope you found the information useful and don't forget to let me know what you think in the comments. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified of future videos. Thanks for watching Bigs on Hobbies.